I think what's interesting about the lighting story, right, is you have the lighting controls side, and then you have the fixture side. And in kind of old traditional world, those two things never came together. And, what we saw in the last decade is sort of, I would say, a coming together of those types of technologies, right? So I think that's the important kind of takeaway is lighting technology is changing.
I'm in the luxury business, and what I love about what I do is that we get to see the latest and greatest in innovation. We get to see things that are, kind of working in the tech world that probably haven't quite trickled down to most homes in America at this point. And I think I used the example of a Ring doorbell the other day, where we used to cobble pieces together to create a Ring doorbell out of intercoms and microphones and speakers and cameras and doorbells. And probably took about $2,000 in labor and $5,000 worth of material to make that happen. And now you can buy it for $99 at your local convenience store, or Amazon for that matter. So what we're going to do today is have a conversation a little bit like that. I want everyone to take a minute to introduce themselves, but we've got a unique group. So we've got two luxury manufacturers at the table. We've got an integrator who works in both the luxury space and in the high volume space. And we've got a high volume builder here to remind me that you guys don't want to spend any more money on tech. So we're gonna put all this together and hopefully give you something to think about when you leave here. Maybe give you a little bit of a glimpse into the future and what's coming in technology that may or may not be affordable today, but will be probably in your roadmap and in your plans for future innovation and future product sales. So with that,
my name is Tony Pratte. I am Director of Builder Contractor Relations and Director of Production for the Sound Room in St. Louis. We've been around for about 42 years. Started as a custom electronics retailer. Locally owned. We're the last one standing in St. Louis. If you don't want to go to Best Buy, you can always buy a TV from us. My goal there and my job there is to expand the Sound Room's reach into the construction market, particularly the production builders.
My name is Angie Larson. I'm with Savant Systems. And, a couple of fun, unique facts, right, that I love is, as Sean mentioned, our tradition and history in the home is kind of in that luxury space for the controls platform. We'll talk a little bit about that. Controls, entertainment, lighting, smart power, and all that piece of that luxury construction. We also own GE Lighting. So we're kind of a unique company in that we both go to market from a luxury perspective as well as straight at that builder market and even consumer market. And so we've got products that kind of span that. So I'll talk a little bit about today, like what I see as the evolution, as Sean said, things that start as very luxury features and how those trickle down in our business and what that looks like, to be kind of on this side and see how those feature sets come down.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm JoAnn Arcenal. I'm the Director of Business Development for Crestron Electronics. And at Crestron Electronics, we offer the full end-to-end solution for your home automation needs. We manufacture, we engineer, and support the full end-to-end solution, the full spectrum. And we are actually, we've traditionally been known for, luxury solutions, but we are actually learning as we've come to all of these summits and all of the, the feedback from the communities that we do need to address all of the different markets. So we're learning just as much as, you're learning from us that we do need to be able to address all the different markets and adapt all of our technology so that we can, address different markets like the high volume, multifamily and such, not just the luxury markets. So we'll be able to showcase some of the ways that we can collaborate and combine some of our technologies to be able to address, multifamily, high volume and such. So excited to talk about that today.
So I am Matt Wilson, and I am the home builder here. I'm the guy that doesn't want to spend more money, but we're a rather large private company based on the East Coast. We're in 10 states. I think we've done a pretty good job with our smart package, and we'll go through that. But I've done every position in our company. I'm not a division president anymore, but I've done that. But my title is EVP of Innovation, so it's the tech side, it's marketing, it's sales. So, just try to do whatever I can.
So I think that's really great lead-in, and thank you for teeing this up for me.
You're welcome.
This is the first couple pages of a setup guide, and essentially amounts to a brochure for Matt's smart home offerings in his communities. You mentioned marketing, and I think that's one of the things that's probably most important to talk about, because there's a couple slides here with some of these elements in it, and you'll see that they're not super expensive products.
Yeah.
But the idea really is to convey that, smart features are part of the home. They can be affordable. We've got to make it easy to use and easy to set up, and there's a lot of fear surrounding that. And I think you've done a good job of dispelling some of that fear anyway with this document. So can you tell me how this was inspired, if there were evolutions of this, and where this came from?
Yeah, so what I'll tell you is it all started out as trying to do smart homes years ago, and it still wasn't easy to do. Ring cameras weren't cheap, things weren't this, and the customer perceived value was just not there. With new technologies, new data, we use partners to tell us, like Audience Town, to tell us exactly what our buyers are wanting, and they want a smart solution that doesn't cost them more money. So what we did was our national purchasing group got with Samsung, who's a partner of ours. We do their appliances. We're one of the only builders that do Samsung. And then we connected with Deco, Ring, Honeywell. And what we wanted to do was a low-cost smart home version that we give to the customer. The one thing I think we all know is we sell $1 million houses and we sell $200,000 houses. It needs to be easy for everyone. And the buyers at both levels, they want something, but they don't all want the same thing. So our idea was to go with a company like SmartThings that combines with, I think their tagline is over 99,000 different types of smart homes, Ring, all those Google, all those different things. So we set up this package. We made it really easy. There's videos to it. This goes how you connect your Samsung appliances, how you connect your Deco switches. The barrier of entry is very easy. And the nice thing is if you do want luxury brands, you can add them after. But we're not driving the cost of our homes up. The one thing, everybody in here, I see some high volume guys, that's our number one thing. We don't want to add cost to our homes. So this is how we came to that, and having good partners like Samsung really helped us achieve this.
What I think is really interesting, and Tony, I'm going to defer this question to you in a second, but what I think is really interesting about what you did with this is that you took what could be a complex setup, right, for the average do-it-yourself consumer. You bundled a solution that you're not offering just pre-wire on, you're not offering it as an option. This is what you get with the house. It's just like getting the power windows in your car. It's like getting the sunroof built in. You don't have to go back and add this stuff after the fact. So you've been able to distill this down into a system that you can use in your marketing materials, that you can implement easily. And I imagine you avoid most of the technical questions from your consumers with a document like this.
You'd be surprised.
I know. I'm in the business too. But you have some control over that. You have control over the selections. You have control over the outcome. I think it's a great approach, and I haven't seen a lot of builders doing that. Tony, have you seen other builders do it this way?
Really, we only have one national builder in the market in St. Louis, and that's Fisher Homes. And they're more regional. They're not across the country, but they're in, I think, like 10 or 14 markets, something like that. Anyway, they worked with the manufacturer. They developed the package, and then the manufacturer told them, okay, here's who you're going to use in each city. And so it just kind of showed up to me. Here was the package. This is what I installed. No big deal. The ones that we work with in St. Louis, just like you, they don't want the cost of the base price of the house to increase. Plain and simple. That's the goal. It's always keeping that price as low as possible. So what we do is each one of them we worked with and got the package to where they wanted it. Whether it was what it included, the price of it, how the process worked. We don't present a one solution fits all process. It's what do you need as the builder? That way we just slot in just like picking out flooring or just like picking out cabinetry. And we found that process to be the best. Sometimes we start off in their design centers, and over time, after they've developed some trust with us, if they're not familiar with us, they gravitate to our showroom. Over time, when they see, oh, we're making how much on options and how much in that rebate? Yeah, we're going to send them over to your showroom because that's where the money is. We're always in the age of increased costs, in the age of increased codes. We're the last frontier for the builder to make more money and increase their profit margins. So that's kind of how we frame ourselves in St. Louis.
So Matt, since you've been in all the seats in your company, it sounds like, can you kind of walk me through the process of how you made a decision to add cost to your home to have a standard package like this? Did you remove something from the kitchen to save that, to offset that cost when you increase the total price? Did you decide that there's enough value in what you're offering here that it's worth the increased price?
There was a small increase of doing this, but our saying is meet the customer where they're at. Everybody wants something smart home wise. It just depends on how much you want to get involved. So we were already including our Honeywell, our Ring. We just didn't have an inclusive package that we went nationwide. So when you go nationwide with something, guess what? The cost comes down.
Yeah.
So it was actually kind of like neutral when it was all said and done. And now we have a really good process. Everybody knows what they're getting. There's a lot of other things to this that are a benefit to home builders as well. And we can talk about that in a little bit. But the whole idea was to be like neutral. But we did add a little cost for a couple items. But we were switching to Deco at the time anyways. So it was pretty much net neutral, though.
Okay. I think this is probably the best example I'm going to share today of how this all sort of comes together. We talked about the Ring doorbell analogy, but at the front door of the house, there's really two things that you're going to interact with in most homes. One's going to be a security access control door lock type event. The other's going to be another security device, which is like a Ring doorbell or any other branded video doorbell. Angie and JoAnn, I'll let you guys talk about this, but I know you've got some luxury solutions. What's your take on the front door? Can we do this for less? Does it have to be a luxury solution to get there?
Yeah, I mean, front door locks, you have a wide range. You can get something off of Amazon and, that's going to do the job. If you wanted an integrated solution, so that you're talking about the whole home and such, so that you can have access control, certain people can use their code certain times of the day. That's something, when we're talking about trickling down luxury for less, that's something that is actually accessible now. So when you have an integrated home and you're talking about that access control, certain people, certain times of the day, certain times of the days of the week and such, that's actually accessible now. So we're able to do that for an integrated home so that we can actually do that for any wireless keypad out there for a very secure keypad. All of the ones that are actually vetted out there, and they can range from $100 to $600. You can get any aesthetic that you like, and we're actually able to integrate that, have that integrated right into your whole home solution, so that you do actually have that luxury, that peace of mind, that security that you're looking for, and that aesthetic that you're looking for, that integrated home access, that integrated access control. But again, you have those different tiers so that you're looking at, you can go to the highest end, $700 plus for that door entry, or you can do, $100 or so, depending on what scale of the home that you're looking at. It is actually accessible at all different market points.
Yeah, Angie, I remember that you had a sort of Savant branded entry system, but you also down the road integrated with other third-party devices too. So what was your thought process there?
What I think has been maybe the most interesting, and these two can probably comment on it, is camera technology, right? And when we first started down this path, right, you were essentially using the video door entry system as some kind of advanced motion detector. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to be really crude about it, but that was kind of what it did, right? It was detecting motion, and it was like alerting you that there was motion. Now we think about what the types of camera technology is doing, and now it's understanding not only is this a human I'm looking at, or is this something else that I'm looking at, right? That's in all of these consumer-based products to be able to identify, as you said, these different types of things. That's amazing. It's also the technology inside these cameras. When you used to look at them and it was dark, which, people might want to look at cameras when it's dark. What they saw was darkness, right? And what you see now, right, is a totally different view, as if it was like daylight outside, the clarity of some of these cameras. So, Sean, I would say that to me is one of the biggest things I've seen over time, is mostly the advancements in the cameras. And then what we then can do with that data is really powerful. So I don't know, you can maybe comment on that.
Well, for the cameras themselves,
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I have one production builder, does 200-300 homes a year. What he has done in his technology package is he's included a video doorbell. And his whole reason is by doing that, he has, once the house is completed, front door cameras watching his subdivisions everywhere, and he is not having to pay for them as far as the video feed. So if something happens at the job site right across the street from the house, he can go up to his homeowner and say, hey, can I look at your video feed? We had, some theft last night. And it's just become so convenient.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sean's analogy about the $7,000 door camera is accurate. I remember the first C4 video station that we did. It's $3,500. We were all, doing dances when Doorbird came out with a $1,400 camera until we found the flaws in that. And when Ring came, even at $299 or $399, that first camera, it was a leap in technology. It's like now video doorbells are accessible to everybody.
So this is your offering, right? You got a Ring doorbell and a lock. Angie, you started talking about something that got me thinking about AI again, which is near and dear to my heart. And I think that there's a lot of mystery surrounding AI, but if we talk about it in camera form, video analytics have come a long way. And the holy grail of this is that if I'm going to put these cameras in my house, I really want to understand what I can do with them, but I want to maximize their value. So having a camera recognize family members, guests, the UPS guy, the mailman, and maybe interact with those people or respond accordingly. So maybe it unlocks the door when it sees my face instead of having to punch in the code. These features aren't necessarily available in these products yet. I know that with systems like Crestron and Savant, we can do some of those things. Is that exciting to you? Is that something that's going to be useful to you? Or is that something that's going to be gimmicky and probably not part of your solution?
I mean, if it's free, we'll do it. But,
I think our work here is done.
Yeah, great answer.
The thing is it's a little different for production because we're doing this to give them the start. After this, they can go and build their dream system. If they want to do the AI, have at it. You can take that Ring off and you can put it on Facebook Marketplace. But this is the start of it. So personally, I love that idea where it's my kids come up to the door and they don't have to unlock it. I love that idea, but I just don't think in the realm that we dance in, it would ever make sense.
Okay, so you're waiting for manufacturers, essentially, like the two here, to come up with a way to bake those features in software so they don't increase your hardware costs, and then you're very receptive to the idea of doing that when it's free.
Yeah, of course I am. But the other thing is if there's a cost down the road to our customers, they don't see that as a perceived value.
Right.
So that's how we really came to this, where it's like you can go mix and match. And I mean, how many people have alarm companies that they pay for now? Very few.
Yeah.
They're doing the online things. And that's our buyers are thinking payment more than anything. So when you go, hey, I'm going to add this software, I'm going to give it to you for a year for free. But then after that, it's $55 a month. They go, so that's a waste.
Right.
So like we think about it in a little different mentality, but then you have the people that really want it. And then they go above and beyond and start buying stuff. You're like, wow, okay, I didn't think you'd need that. So we just like to be that happy beginning point. But yeah, if it's free, we're in. So let me know.
When you were deciding on the SmartThings platform, I assume that was because there was no monthly subscription fee.
That's correct.
And that ruled out some other people who want to actually be at this event this week in terms of a monthly subscription that offers some great platforms, but probably didn't come into your...
Yeah, so we have a large partnership with Samsung,
Yeah.
so that helps too. But the openness of SmartThings, the ability to connect, it just gives our buyers the ability to turn it into what they want it to be. We were, I won't say the name, but we were connected to the nice pads and all that stuff. And I still have that in my house because that's what I want. But our buyers don't perceive that as a value. So their value is to bring a whole bunch of things that they want and they can add them onto SmartThings. Yep. So
we're going to talk about lighting a little bit. I'm sure that you guys are sick of hearing me talk about lighting. So we're going to talk about controls a little and talk about more how it integrates with the stuff that you're doing, the work that you're doing. But before we do that, let's talk about really briefly, summarize sort of the high end of lighting and lighting control, the features that we're looking at in the luxury world that may or may not represent themselves in Matt's offerings.
Well, so again, we're talking about trickling down and really just the adapting of, luxury technologies to, different markets. So in the past, we used to see, lighting controls strictly for high-end luxury. That again is coming down. We're adapting that. So it used to be again strictly for high-end luxury. We're seeing this coming down. So we're seeing manufacturers. There's a new manufacturer. This is not Crestron, but it is somebody that we work with. It is DMF Lighting, and they have new lighting control or new lighting fixtures now where you are actually able to do tunable white lighting. There's other manufacturers out there that also do this. They're at a much higher price point, but DMF Lighting, you don't have to run extra wiring. This actually runs right off of the same power wiring that you already have. It's existing power cabling, and you can actually do tunable white lighting. So when you're talking about tunable LEDs, when people are talking about circadian lighting, this is actually a technology that is existing now. It has come down substantially in price points. So it is actually something that is coming down. It is accessible to more markets now. And it is something, now you're looking, super accessible, seeing the simplicity of the controls right there. Again, as we're talking about adapting, these technologies are, just like any other technology that's out there, as we see them become more accessible, they're around longer, the price comes down, and now it really is being, adapted for high volume, for a multifamily, and again, just being able to adapt tunable white lighting, which is adaptable for circadian lighting. I don't know if that's been an ask, but if it ever is, it is accessible for high volume. So we're seeing that in lighting control now.
Angie, you feel a little bit of experience in lighting, I think.
Oh my goodness. I was gonna play a game, Sean. That's how I'm having a game show in my head right now, right? So we, started looking at, I think what's interesting about the lighting story, right, is you have the lighting controls side, and then you have the fixture side. And in kind of old traditional world, those two things never clashed. They never came together. They never did those things. They were kind of separate and independent. Now, that's problematic for folks like us, but that's the way the kind of technology worked and the different manufacturers worked. And, what we saw in the last decade is sort of, I would say, a coming together of those types of technologies, right? So I think that's the important kind of takeaway is lighting technology is changing, and it really started in that luxury space. So I'm going to, in my game show head, Sean, I thought, okay, the first tunable fixture that I ever saw and we started working with costs around $900 a piece. Okay, so if we start counting down lights in your projects, you think about lights that tune or change colors starting at that $900 to $1,000 a piece. We're now seeing that technology come down to $200-$300 a piece, which is very interesting with a lot of great and advanced features. And we're now seeing, like, on the consumer side, and some of the slides, as we look at different options and pieces on the GE lighting side, they're coming down to even $20 to $30 a piece, right? So we're starting to see that technology that started a decade ago at $900 to $1,000 be sitting here today in front of us at $20 to $30 a piece. Now, kind of like the old Ford model, I hope you want those in white, yeah. Right? Right? Like they're basic in their nature, but what they deliver for the bang is pretty fascinating. So you start thinking about today, oh my goodness, what are my primary suite look like, or maybe my great rooms? Hey, maybe these are the types of features that we can introduce.
So Matt, I know you're not going to pay any extra for these light fixtures, but I do have a question for you. Would this be on your option sheet? A $20, $30 upgrade to a recessed light can in maybe your kitchen or the bedrooms or in the patio?
In white.
White or white.
I noticed.
So no. So what would be on our option sheet is a layout that you would get puck lighting. Okay. So we have gone away from recessed lighting. We go strictly to puck lighting. Mm-hmm. Basically, our mentality is we're going to wire it in for you, and then you can have all your dreams of what you want to add to that home. We do that two-part warranty. So we don't like going back on fixtures that we sell and things like that. So if the consumer can go find their beautiful lighting at their local custom or wherever they go for it for their lighting, they can make it their choice.
The answer was no. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, outside of this builder right here, have you seen any builders you're working with offering lighting upgrades?
As far as production builders, yes. Actually, we had one. They came in. We put in, because for integrators, this is like our next frontier, is going into the fixtures. So we actually put in a lighting lab so people could come in and experience it all. Well, we had one production builder client. She came in. She loved it. She ended up buying like 30 fixtures. It was a $12,000 change order to the builder. Builder got 20 points. They were excited about it. We just handed them off to the electrician. We met them out there. They wired them in for us. And when we did our final, we programmed everything, and client was ecstatic. You know, the big thing with her is she could change colors.
Well, it's interesting because it's gone from, I think, Sean, like a SmartThings story, which is important, and some of what we're talking about here, to lighting can also really importantly be a wellness story.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the builder and what you're trying to deliver. But I know some of you are thinking about, oh, what does that look like? And maybe that's different than a SmartThings story, is wellness in the home. And if I can do that as an optionality for $20 to $30 a fixture, that's interesting.
This is a picture of recessed lighting inside one of Matt's homes.
It is, yeah. And those are model lights, the pendants. We do not offer those, but they look nice. So what you would do is, our option package is basically pretty simple. It's the schematic of where the recessed lighting is going to look, POC lights as we use. You're basically paying for the wire and the location. Then you can make it your dream home after that.
So you're going away from keyless fixtures where you just screw the light bulb into the socket, right? You've got an actual LED surface.
It's an LED
hope
POC
so.
that sits at the top. Yes, correct.
bulb.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
Please.
okay.
Okay, so we're going to touch on motorized shades. I already know your answer, so I'll come back to you at the end of this.
I actually have a good reason why we don't do this, but all right. So we do not pre-wire. We do not try to pre-wire for anything, because no matter what we do, they can get an installer, a great installer, to install something, and at the end of the day, it's still the builder's fault. The reason the shades don't go up and down is because your electrician installed it wrong, not the installer, which the installer may have done nothing wrong. But we also do a risk analysis where we go, how many times are we going to have to send somebody back into this home for a very minimal profit? So I think all the high volume guys will agree with me that it's like you have to have that analysis, and you go, okay, well, this makes sense, but what's the warranty look like on the back end? So that's kind of my 2 cents on these kind of items.
So in all seriousness, if you did an analysis like that, did you have a conversation that went something like this? So there's manufacturers that make fairly inexpensive battery-powered motorized
Absolutely.
shades. Don't require any pre-wire. They're sort of a lick it and stick it type product where you stick it on the wall and program it into the remote. Maybe it comes with a remote control.
Yeah.
We can sell it for $400. We can pay maybe $200 for that product to make a nice chunk of change on it. We've consciously decided we don't want to offer that product.
No, we haven't. We haven't gone in that far. And I think that's one of those products that we probably could do, something like that is not affecting the construction of it. One thing about Deco, though, that we did, which is really, really cool. So we have a customer portal similar to something like Foundation, where the customer can go in and they will order from Deco online, they'll order from Samsung online, and then they can make the packages how they want them to be. And for builders, it's part of a revenue share. I think I can say that. So the customer gets a discount, and then they can start buying things and add them to their homes. And if you don't know what Deco is, it is the switch that you can pull out and put dimmers in and things like that. So I would say to the blinds, if it is a battery operation, that is something that could be valuable.
All right.
I will give you that.
We did it.
All right.
Okay. Well, and I think, Sean, I'll just make a comment on shades as well, as I think shades has been partly a very luxury product because windows are different, and we haven't been able to get all the window manufacturers to make the same size windows. So that's been like a bummer, right? Like I'm just gonna be honest with you. So you've got all this variability, and sometimes that, even if you do it perfect, adds cost, right? Because there's all kinds of measuring activity, and did you do it right, and did you do it wrong? And when the actual window went in, and the framing and the putting and all the things that happened? Did it change sizes? And we get all of the challenges associated. But I think we've gotten to a place, and I really can't believe I'm going to repeat Sean's term of lick and stick, but I'm going to just say it out loud for the group because he just let that slip in there. But I think you've gotten to this point now where you see some of these battery powered shades. Batteries last years now versus, minutes, right? So you got these battery powered shades, and you can kind of put in standard sizes, and maybe they overrun the window just a little bit. Maybe they do all these things, and you can start to see how you can get some consistency, I think, through the home in better ways. So I do think shade, it's not so much a technology story about do shades go up and do shades go down. It's really more of an installation story associated with how do we do it, because that's where cost ends up. And how many times, I think, Sean, even in your business, you just see stacks of mismeasured shades, right? And that's really challenging.
It used to be free.
Yeah. I'm going to come to your defense, Matt, because in the St. Louis market, our largest builder will not pre-wire shades.
Yes.
Okay, it's battery powered only.
Yep.
Every other one will do that. They will wire them, and I wire a lot of shades. And I can tell you some of the weird accidents that happen, which the builder had to eat or would have had to eat. And one of the craziest ones was the HVAC guy dropped off his tin, leaned it up, it fell over, grabbed one of my shade wires, and yanked it out of all the holes. And I just happened to be there walking the job, and I saw it, got it, an installer out there to rerun it. But I took pictures, sent it to the builder, and said, you might want to have a conversation because this could have cost you thousands of dollars. So the strangest accidents can happen because, well, we know construction accidents are going to happen. Never seen a house built without one, but we have to be cognizant of that.
I just wanted to, just on this note, the way that we have adapted, just as we're talking about, just adapting our technology so that we're more accessible. These are our manual to motorized shades where it's the same exact tube. So we have, we can install the manual shades. It's the same exact tube. It's the same exact fabric. We actually just pull it right down from the track, and then we remove the manual clutch and we insert the motor right into there, right into that same tube. It's the same tube, same fabric and everything, where it is pre-wired, thankfully, when we can convince everybody to do that. And then we just attach it. So there's no change in the hardware. There's no change in the brackets. Everything is right there. And then we can actually just accommodate for the power, just connect it right there. So again, it's no change in the hardware, no change in the bracket, no change in that tube or the fabric. And then we actually just connect it to the power. And then, so it doesn't have to be a day one investment, especially for the builder. They can just, but it is smart ready so that it is a lot more competitive. But again, it's we don't have to worry about mismeasuring for that upgrade. It's a lifetime warranty right there. So being able to adapt to that. Thank you.
JoAnn, thanks for putting this slide together, the sustainability slide. Rather than diving into all the things you can spend money on to make your house energy efficient, sustainable, what have you, I think it's kind of interesting to talk about the add-ons and what would be coming to add on to your particular products that you've already included. So things like, you mentioned occupancy sensors, right? Angie, I know that you've got a full line of, I don't want to call them smart breakers, but it's essentially what they are. These things are maybe not affordable. The occupancy sensors maybe are, but maybe the two of you and maybe even Tony can talk a little bit about why those things are becoming popular in luxury homes. Maybe we could see these down the road and what they mean to every consumer, not just a luxury buyer.
Well, I can start. I know we use, Lutron makes that kind of dumb switch. I like to call it that motion switch, where you walk in the room, it pops on. And we love using those in closets, secondary bathrooms, and even, kind of like family entries, just because you walk in and it pops on and everybody's there. When they leave, think about it. When you're coming in from, work, or you're coming in from the grocery store, hands are full. It's a lot easier just to walk in and the light pop on than, trying to, elbow a switch or something like that. We like them because while we do lighting control, they are a very inexpensive way to get some sort of control for being in a room that you're not really going to get a lot of use out of or value out of. That's the nice thing about it. You put them in the kids' bathroom, they forget to turn the light off, they leave, 10 minutes later, shuts off itself. You don't have to worry about it.
Sean, I'd say, like, as I look at that, if we look at today and the future as kind of a together statement, right? I think you start to look at what used to be, like you say, this idea of occupancy, right, to somebody in here. And that was a very common way to use, I mean, in whether it's commercial or residential or otherwise, right, as a way to save energy and be sustainable. I think we're going to look into the future and you're going to start to see that being more, I can't believe I'm going to use the word AI driven, but I'm going to say that in this conversation here because, you know, are you going to the closet? Are you going to the bathroom? Are you going to the kitchen? Are you going all those places without your phone or your wearable or your other things in your pocket? Probably not, right? So we're starting to have the house understand where you are, which really changes the game, I think, in sustainability and other things, right? It knows now from your CarPlay that you've pulled into the neighborhood. It knows now all these things that are happening, right? This is very software-based, not hardware-based, right? This is very software-based of understanding what is happening in that environment. And I think just like cameras, this is going to change the game of different things that we can do inside the space, right? And not be hardware cost driven, right? But lifestyle and software driven and much more integrated into the devices you already own, which I think will be a very interesting story. So I think that's a thing to think about when we think about this story.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't have to be something that we do that's totally outside of the realm of what we're already going to be doing. You know, we're already talking about lighting, we're already talking about shades. Perhaps it's just something that that's just, you know, that small extra, that occupancy sensor, perhaps that photo sensor. That does not have to be something, again, you know, totally, you know, expensive or any, really complex programming. Just maybe some conditionals. You know, if there's someone in the room, then, you know, it stays on. If not, then it's turning off. So that's going to, you know, to protect against, passive heat. If room is unoccupied, then shut down shades. So then that's, again, going to shut down against your passive heat in the summertime, or it's going to harvest that heat during the winter time. So then that's going to create a much more sustainable home. So, you know, it's these little things. Again, these are not technologies that are going to be completely off the wall. We've been talking about lighting control. We've been talking about shades as these things that, you know, are really, you know, great baseline investments as far as, you know, what homeowners are starting to expect, they're starting to look at, and we already established that these are things that can become more accessible in all different markets, you know? So again, just looking at these adoptions and, you know, the compatibility as far as different market price points, and then just utilizing those in ways towards sustainability. It's something that if we choose to, to market it towards that, it is a lot more accessible as far as, you know, high volume or what have you.
Well, I do know a way to get you to buy these things.
Okay.
It might not be this administration, but it may
Give
be
me a tax
legislated.
rebate.
Either a rebate or a mandate, one or the other. There are some states, I'm sure some of you work in those states, that require some of these devices be installed.
Of course.
So yeah, that's one way to get these things right into your smart home.
And eventually you can kind of see that's the direction things will go.
100%.
Government will mandate things like this, whether it's light switches built in with those sensors and that's all you can get, or you're going to have to do this if you want your house to pass an inspection.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity there too, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing it better than the required device, that feels like a better solution that you can market to your
Absolutely.
buyer. Conditional logic, this speaks to programming again, and I think that what's interesting is, in my experience with a lot of home control systems, when a manufacturer offers different levels of product, they've got their high-end expensive product, they've got their middle-of-the-line product, they've got their entry-level product, regardless of where that price is on the spectrum. Usually what happens, it's a very similar product, but the features are stripped out, correct? So you get to that entry-level price point, and maybe you don't have the ability to say, I want this light to turn on when it's Tuesday, or when it's dark out, or when it's raining. I want my temperature to adjust when I open the front door. It might only adjust on a time clock or on an astronomical time clock that knows what, whether it's daylight or nighttime, but it doesn't actually have a sensor that integrates. As the manufacturers at this table, can you speak to that a little bit? And are we talking about a software upgrade, or are we talking about actual hardware differences?
Well, for when we're talking about, for Crestron at least, Crestron Home is a is a configuration-based platform. And we actually have this native within our space. So it's not so much programming anymore. This is native within our platform, so it's conditional. So really on the back end, there's no programming involved. It's really just, we were just talking about this for sustainability. It's if then, and it's really just a logic statement, which, if you've used Excel, which we probably were all tortured with that at some point in our lives, you're understanding this. So, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but let's say, as far as, our shades, contact closures, a lot of us are using this as far as, just security or anything like that. Let's say contact closures as far as shades go. Let's say we have contact closures on a specific, let's say in this space, on windows 1 and 2. So let's say contact closures, if contact closure between 1 and 2 is not engaged, then shade 1 is not going to come down. And that's going to protect your investment there for that shade. You've already invested in that. So that's going to make sure that shade 1 is not going to come down because that window is not closed. So that shade is not going to come down. That's going to protect against that. But, so that's one specific example. We can probably think of a lot more creative ones that are going to be a lot more impactful for that home. But just the idea of this conditional logic, it's something that I think a lot of people, again, we can think of really creative ways to portray this. But it really is this is built right into our platform. It's configuration based, so there's no custom programming whatsoever. And it's very, very compelling and it's very competitive when you're talking about a smart ready home or a smart home. So, on the back end, again, it's if-then statements. But again, it's very competitive and very compelling when you're talking about, it's a smart ready home or a smart home.
Layered lighting, we talked about a little bit, but tell me a little bit about the GE product and where you've had success with high volume builders, because I know that wasn't an offering that you had a few years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is one of those, right, very cool innovations that kind of comes down market, right? So now you're starting to look at exactly what you were talking about. Let's look at very flat, very puck-based, very flat lighting, clean ceilings, right? That's a term we used to use in the luxury space. Clean ceilings, I think, is really important in every space, right? Where people want to see that very clean visual look. So now you're starting to look at, there's two things on this slide that really amaze me from a product standpoint and a pricing standpoint. The fact that you can now buy 2-inch lighting fixtures, right, on the shelves of a Lowe's or a Target or wherever, that's unbelievable, right? That used to be a very luxury architecturally designed fixture style, right? And now you're seeing things like 2-inch and 4-inch and 6-inch be commonplace, right inside the consumer experience. I think that is very, very interesting. And then I think that idea of tunability and color changing and other things becomes really important to you. And even JoAnn said it, this idea that now I'm going to support some of those health and wellness benefits at these types of price points, I think is very engaging. Those are some of those kinds of things. And I think we hit the shading. What I was going to say, Sean, as we look at some of that conditional based, right, is when you start to look at kind of the next slide that we did, which is related around the energy story in the home, right? And as we start to look at energy management, I would think of like, hey, there's some discussion here around energy management, or sometimes I like to use the word resource management. And I think whether you're a production builder or you're a custom home builder, wherever you are in the spectrum, you're going to be expected to help people manage their resources differently, right? And so I think power is becoming an important resource in every home, and how do we help them manage that? So there's all kinds of cool things that JoAnn was talking about of, right, if I am moving from grid power to emergency backup power with a generator, or if I am moving from grid power to solar power, whatever my story is as I'm going through my journey of those kinds of sources, what am I doing with the loads that are currently on? Am I shedding some of those, right? Am I turning things off? Am I turning things on? How am I doing those types of things? So I think that's going to become a really key piece of the future, is how do we manage resources within the home?
I think this paints a really good picture of what we're talking about today. This is probably the best example of something that started as almost inaccessible to everyone and is now becoming more and more commonplace. And in areas like we talked about earlier, where energy efficiency will be mandated or legislated into play, there was a time when everyone knew what the Tesla Powerwall was. However you feel about Tesla, I apologize, but they were the first to really publicly advertise a battery storage solution for solar.
Sure.
Yeah.
So their dream was solar generation, battery storage for backup. They didn't have the smart breaker integration or the load control capabilities that you have, but they did have the EV charger element as well. And I think these are things that consumers are probably asking for, maybe not in all homes, maybe not in all markets, obviously. But we're starting to see pretty significant price drops in these. And these are products that, whether you want to offer them or not, your clients will be installing in your homes at some point. Are you seeing that? Are you getting requests for things like this?
Yeah, so we offer EV chargers, so you definitely can do that. There's also some municipalities that are forcing us to put them in.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little strange for us, but when we're building in those areas, that's what the consumer's asking for. So legislation's going with them on that one.
Yeah.
So, but we do offer EV and all those items that you can charge an electric car.
What about solar? Is that part of your offering?
It is not.
Is that by design? Is it just because of your geography?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I think it would have to do with cost, but I don't know the answer.
I sense a theme.
Yeah.
You got that.
And the one thing I think we have to talk about in the production world is we face appraisals.
Yeah.
You guys add all this stuff on, the appraiser doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's a swimming pool. You put a $100,000 swimming pool in, it's worth $40,000 on an appraisal. So this is all great, but at the end of the day, these are cash-strapped people that need to close on their home, and guess who eats it when it doesn't meet the appraisal? We do. So we love the idea of it, but there has to not only be the perceived value of the customer, there has to be the actual physical value when they do the appraisal of that. So I like these ideas, but some of these are best suited for after they move in their house. And not to mention, a 30-year mortgage at a 7.5% rate right now, you add these little add-ons like a refrigerator, that's going to cost you $20,000 in 30 years.
Yeah.
So if you think about those kind of things, and consumers are with us at a payment point, we have to work in that payment point. So as you add these little things on, yeah, we're going to sell it. It's like, hey, you just don't drink Starbucks for a week. That's how we'll sell it. But at the end of the day, it's still, when they're living paycheck to paycheck, they think about all these expenses.
Yeah, I'm not looking at this as an entry level product, obviously, but I think that what I'm seeing is just the evolution of this technology. The prices have become, it's like anything else. The first HDTV was probably $20,000, and you can get one for $200.
$200, yeah.
So we're not at $200 yet, are we, Angie?
Well, I think it's interesting if you look at, my big takeaway here would be, I think everyone should be looking at intelligence inside the breaker panel, right? That to me is a thing we all need to be looking at, right? And I think how you add that intelligence is kind of scalable in price right now, right? And, my advice is, hey, there's probably 4 or 6 circuits in the home that are going to consume most of the power. So I'm just going to say that, right? There's probably, a very small amount of circuits that are consuming the majority of the power. You're starting to talk about the water heater. You're starting to talk about, things that the HVAC. You're starting to talk about those kinds of things that are going to consume 80% of the power. If we just had the ability to control and monitor and react to those things, that would be a great place to start, is that intelligence of those kind of main use circuits.
Do you ever see it being at the fixture level, where like you partner with GE and at the fixture it goes, hey, you're burning this many kilowatts in this room?
Oh, I think it's, I'm going to say yes to all of it. I think intelligence in the fixture is here now, and the ability to control that fixture directly is here now. I think, one of the things that, Savant is doing, and we can talk through it, is direct control of the appliance, right? And I'm using that word appliance very broadly, but, we now have direct control of the water heater. We now have direct control of the oven. We now have direct control of the EV charger. If you think of the EV charger as an appliance. And so as you have direct control of those items, right, you're not putting any sort of product in the middle that maybe has a failure point or an additional cost point or all those pieces. You're literally having direct control of those main use circuits, right? And I think that's going to be very cool and very impactful, right? And you think about that water heater, like why do we care about having direct control of the water heater as a controls platform? Well, that water heater is consuming more energy than almost anything else in the home, and the homeowner has no control of when that water is being heated. Is it being heated at the most expensive time of the day? Is it being heated at the least expensive time of the day? And should they care about that? Yes, they should, right? And how can we help them understand and manage that?
So we used to use the Prius, right, as the analogy for that. So the original Prius design had that little leaf meter on the dashboard, and it sort of gamified energy consumption. So you could see how much fuel you were burning or not burning. So all those Prius drivers, and I'm not one of them, would take their foot off the gas and see if they could get 928 miles per gallon in their Prius, and then post their results online and see if they were beating their next door neighbor in efficiency. It's kind of the same concept, right, where you now have not just control, but visibility over what your consumption is. So for a cost-conscious consumer who is living paycheck to paycheck, if there's instead of a smart breaker, instead of a regular breaker, there's a smart breaker in place, now they can see exactly what you described. I'm spending X number of dollars on heating my water, but I'm not home all day. So I don't need hot water between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. And maybe I can save a couple bucks that way.
Maybe I supercharge it at 3 a.m. so I can use it at 9 a.m., right? So these things are the technology of today, and it really brings, I would say, major cost savings to that entry-level mid-market consumer.
And I think that's marketable, something like that. I just think you have to look at how long does it cost to pay that off?
Right.
And if you can balance that out, I love that idea. I mean, hot water tanks waste so much electricity.
Huge rip.
Yeah.
Well, you can see Andy was generous enough to put together just an idea for a package there with a little bit of that control. It included some lighting, it included some switches, it included the smart breakers, and it's a $1,500 retail. Is retail, right?
Retail. It's all
retail
retail,
package,
right? So these prices seem a little scary, but from a builder perspective, this can be very, very profitable, and you can immediately start talking about some of these. Again, you're starting to talk about wellness, you're starting to talk about energy efficiency, you're starting to talk about all these pieces with your client. You'll notice I don't have anything on here, Sean, that's talking about smart entertainment features, right? I think a lot of that becomes aftermarket in the types of homes that you're dealing with, right? But some of this, what I would call foundational or infrastructure, I think is really important to look at.
Well, we actually burn through all the time quicker than
All right.
we would.
Well, that's good.
So thanks to everyone on the panel. Thanks everyone for attending. It was good to see everyone. I hope you all have a safe trip home, and we'll see you in Dallas.
Hey, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
That was perfect, by the way.